So I'm a yoga teacher, sound healer, I'm a sex educator, tantric sex educator. I do also some psychic medium work, tantric sex and psychic work, teaching people how to communicate with spirit is a lot similar. Sounds different, but it's very similar. It's just teaching you how to connect to your energetic body so that you can become aware and interact more effectively with someone else's energetic body. And what we call the energetic body is our nervous system. It's our electrical system in the body. It goes off the electrical impulse created by our heart and then runs through our nervous system. We have a brake and an accelerator as our masculine and our feminine. The masculine is the accelerator, moving forward, force, and the feminine is our brake to relax and surrender, right? You think about a car battery, because we place so much bias on masculine, feminine, male, female. There's a lot of stories and experience traumas attached to it, right? But if we think about a car battery, we have the red node and the black node. We don't have a bias against the two. We just know there are two different currents that come together to create power, to create that field of fusion. So you can think about it like masculine is fire and feminine is water. And the fire and water being able to come together in a field, creating like steam, right? And our nervous system, that electrical system in our body, the masculine and feminine, our right side is our masculine side, and our left side is our feminine side. And then it switches over in the brain. Left brain, logical, masculine, structure, labels, right? And the right side of feminine, creative, just abstract. So the right side of the body is masculine, left side is feminine. We have the Ida Pingala going up in the body, and they start to spiral around the spine. And where the masculine and feminine intersect, that creates our chakras, our energy vortexes. Some of you may have heard about a Kundalini awakening, the Kundalini energy in the body. Have you heard of that? So that's the masculine and feminine coming together in that fusion to create that power. Our life force energy, sometimes called our sexual energy. We can learn to orgasm through all of our chakras. Because sex is so repressed, the body is so repressed in our Western culture, typically most people have only experienced sexual sacral chakra orgasm, expulsion of energy from that chakra, and they tend to kind of obsess over that and let it out a little too early instead of learning how to move it up the body. And a lot of times why we keep that repressed also in a physical sense is because we're not learning how to ground our energy. When we're not pelvic floor breathing and opening the base of our body on our inhale and pumping back up on the exhale, then our energy can't ground. If we're closing up, if you notice when you inhale, notice what's happening at the base of the body. Do you tend to pull up in the body? And when do you tend to let go of the pelvic floors, on your exhale or your inhale? Right? Typically, most people do it on the exhale, and that's just a part of development. There's nothing wrong with you. We want to learn how to open up that energy, get that free-flowing energy so we can ground our current. So it's no longer pinging back and forth between the top of the spine and the base of the spine, between anxiety and depression, that toxic masculine, toxic feminine state. So we want to be able to balance in the center, create that harmony of the relationship between our masculine, our feminine, our brake and our accelerator, our ones and our zeros, our inhale and our exhale, right? Our strength and our flexibility. You can think of orgasm, we always kind of tie sexuality to the orgasm, but it's really just an expulsion of energy. Think about your heart getting excited or shivers running through your body. That's orgasm too. It's your body just energy going shuddering through the body. And typically in our world, we tend to take vibration in and impact, and we take it and we contract, and every micro little tension we hold on, creating that armor. When we can learn to radiate orgasm through our full energetic system, then we're moving energy out, we're deflecting that, so we're not having to shred off, shake off all of that stuff. It's not even penetrating us because we're radiating, right? It's something I feel in my body that when I'm creating it, and the sensations I feel and how it feels in my brain and electrical system, that it's something that could probably be measured through some type of scanning or medical device. I received an iWatch and was wearing it one day, just kind of checking my pulse, and I had done the heart thing, and I noticed that my pulse just raced. It just jumped up like 40 points. And I did deep breathing and kind of bring it down. I didn't realize that I was increasing my heart rate. So it feels like this energy that comes out of my heart is just like pouring like a hose, and it's sparkly and it's tingly and it's opening, spacious and beautiful. It's kind of the same sensation in my brain through the third eye, kind of in this upper chakra area, that it's like a tingling. When I do it in my brain, it doesn't make my heart race. I don't know how to monitor that yet or measure that yet, but I will give a little demo of me doing the heart thing and how it raises my pulse so quickly. We'll start at 106. Ready? You're not gonna see me move. Here we go. She's good job. We'll stop there. Take some breaths. Sound release is great. See? So this is kind of the basis of starting to learn how to do that. And we're gonna start with the pelvic floor breathing. Our body is a pumping system, and the biggest pump in our body is the very base of our body and the top of this big chamber here, right? So we need to get that pump situated. If this pump is dysfunctional, all the other pumps are gonna follow this dominant pump. And if it has a funky pattern or some kinks in it, they're all gonna pick up on that pattern and start to do the same thing. That causes illness and stress and all of this stuff. So we need to get that main pump functioning to have all those other pumps follow along. But it's all just part of our body. This is our biology and how it functions. We've just been perverted into thinking this other story and this compartmentalization, that we don't know how to function as a whole. So when we can open up those channels, those pathways, we can move more sensation fully through the body and not just down here, right? And kind of exhausting that and wearing it out. And I was like, depending all on that, there's pleasure to be had, right? It's not all sexual, but it's just as enjoyable, right? We learn to live in that orgasmic state. It's kind of sound baths are about practicing living in that orgasmic state, so that becomes our baseline, rather than I'm so stressed I need to get there. I'm already there, and then I can fly from that, right? In the beginning stages of life, we're connected to nutrients and resource through the umbilical cord. Most of us take our first breath through the mouth once it's cleared. In our early stages of development, we mostly breathe through the mouth and into the chest. With an open mouth breath, we have a larger intake valve with the throat. Once we start to get older, we start to breathe through our nose, having a smaller intake valve and being able to regulate breath a bit better. And we may continue to breathe mostly into the chest until we learn belly breathing. I learned belly breathing during panic attacks in high school. I couldn't get breath into my body. I had really shallow breaths into the chest, just causing me to hyperventilate and not get enough oxygen. So I was taught to belly breathe. Belly breathing makes it easier to take a deeper breath. There's no bones around the belly, so we can protrude the belly to try to suction more air down. I would consider this the intermediate breath, because eventually we want to get to breathing into the full container of the body. This is what we would call pelvic floor breathing. Let me first say, when we breathe, we're only taking air into the lungs. There's no air that fills up the belly or fills up inside the chamber of the chest. Unless you have a punctured lung, then there isn't any oxygen that's going to seep into the body. The lower half of the body, where the belly resides, is sealed off from the lungs through our diaphragm. So there's no air moving, we're just displacing mass of the body and moving muscle. So let's take a look at the pelvic floor. This is a female specimen, but the inside of the pelvic bowl looks the same for males. This is our pelvic bowl, this network of muscles within the hip bones, the pelvic bone here. Now the pelvic bone is very similar to the shoulder girdle. It has this opening in the center, in the shoulder girdle where our head comes out, and the pelvic floor, it's where our urinary tract, our defecation system releases through the openings of the pelvic floor. So the muscles are kind of woven together, and there are openings within that allow things to move out, but it also holds our organs in the body. And you'll see at the back, it's located just under the tailbone. So it's right at the base of the spine. This is all very nerve-rich muscle coming right off of the spinal cord. So we want to keep these muscles loose and relaxed and allowing energy and vibration, blood and oxygen to move easily through this area. When we're pelvic floor breathing, we can expand and bring oxygen and circulation to the area. When we belly breathe, the muscles of the abdomen are actually pulling up on the pelvic floor in order to push the belly forward. I'll give a demonstration of what pelvic floor breathing versus belly breathing looks like in the body. So when I belly breathe, my belly comes forward on the inhale, and exhale, the belly comes to spine. In order to move my organs forward, I have to displace the muscle down here in and up to help move everything forward. Then exhale, belly to spine. Also notice when I bring my belly forward, it kind of brings a little arch to my back. It's harder to lengthen through my spine. So here's belly breath. And here's pelvic floor breathing. I can actually get a lot deeper breath when I'm inflating both chambers of the body, the upper chamber and the lower chamber. And that's because when the pelvic floor moves down, the organs can move down. It actually kind of suctions the diaphragm downward. And as it suctions the diaphragm downward, I can expand farther into the chest and through the collarbone and shoulders. My lungs are in the top part of my chest, moving down to the bottom of my ribs. If I'm belly breathing and widening this part of the body, I'm actually only getting an expansion mostly through the bottom of the ribs. And what's happening when I expand through the center is that I'm having to squeeze or compress the tops and the bottom to get that center forward. So remember, I'm not pulling breath in. There's no air to inflate that belly. I'm displacing my organs forward rather than down. When I can move my organs down, I can lengthen through my spine much better. I'll try to use this balloon as a visual. So if I want to expand in the belly, move the belly forward, then I'm either going to have to compress the body or squeeze at the top and bottom to inflate the center. If I want to get more air into the upper part of this chamber and the base of this chamber, then I can constrict in the center and squeeze into the center so that I can inflate more like a hourglass instead of a balloon in the body. Also notice the difference in my chest when I belly breathe versus pelvic floor breathing. If I belly breathe, you see kind of pulling down on my chest, and exhale, belly to spine. Inhale, belly comes down, kind of pulls my shoulders forward. If I pelvic floor breathe, you see my chest gets more space to expand and lift. You even notice at the base of my body, moving down and out. Let's take one more look at belly breathing versus pelvic floor breathing, and notice the length of my breath, how deep of a breath I'm able to get in a belly breath versus pelvic floor breathing. Inhaling into the belly. Inhaling into the pelvic floor. So I feel very limited by the belly breath because I'm only able to expand and suction breath into the body as wide as I can pull that diaphragm around, rather than suctioning the diaphragm down and creating space for the breath to blossom into the chest and spread through the collarbone. We can compare pelvic floor breathing to the movements of a flower. In the inhale, the flower is blossoming upward, rooting down, roots are spreading into the earth. On exhale, it's retracting, pulling inward, compressing and releasing the breath. On the inhale, sprouting out, spreading across the chest and down through the base of the body. Exhale, lift, gathering and contracting inward to compress the breath out of the body. You can imagine the ribs like petals closing in, the intercostal muscles spreading to open into the light of the breath. Inhaling and expanding, exhaling, retracting, and contracting. And if we're breathing backwards and lifting up on the pelvic floors, we inhale. It's like we're uprooting ourselves as we're trying to grow. So we're cutting off our resources to nutrients and fluidity. So what we want to do is expand in both directions, root down into the ground and blossom upward, suctioning and creating that channel to move the nutrients in between, gathering and lengthening through our suctioning stem in order to connect these two areas. Create that traction and extension through the spine. Exhale, closing down, compressing the air out of that main pump to cleanse and detoxify. When we apply the pelvic floor breathing, the bouquet of the breath can really spread through the chest and ground our body through the base. And on the exhale, lift and gather everything to compress the breath out of the body. Versus belly breathing, where we get that tapering effect of widening the middle of the body. Possibly even overstretching the muscles of the abdomen, making it more difficult to create that girdle of support for our core and low back. And again, when that belly comes forward, it's pulling the abdominal muscles, or pulling on that pelvic floor, contracting and tightening. We need those nerve pathways to be open at the base of the spine so that our body has full connection and the ability to ground our nervous system. If you ask Google, the answer will be the intermediary breath, breathing into the belly to vacuum, breath into the lungs. But you have all you need to experiment a body and the ability to breathe in order to test the pelvic floor breathing versus the belly breathing and see which one really gives you more space and vacuum in order to allow our lungs to flood with oxygen. And you can think about, when yoga teachers say breathe into the belly, you can kind of turn that into, now when you hear that, instead of pushing the belly forward, think breathe into the deepest part of the belly. So you can think breathing into the lowest part of the belly, just above the pubic bone, and blowing up that part of the belly. Our body is a pumping system, and the biggest pump in our body is the very base of our body and the top of this big chamber here, right? So we need to get that pump situated. If this pump is dysfunctional, all the other pumps are going to follow this dominant pump. And if it has a funky pattern or some kinks in it, they're all going to pick up on that pattern and start to do the same thing. That causes illness and stress and all of this stuff. So we need to get that main pump functioning to have all those other pumps follow along. I'm going to show you what the pelvic floor looks like in the body. And you can think about the shoulder girdle. It's a lot like the shoulder girdle where our head comes out. We have this opening at the base of the body where our urethra, our defecation system, everything kind of pours out of the body. And so it's like a network of muscles woven together. It's got the little openings for the urethra, anus, vaginal canal, and it holds our organs in. It's also like a second diaphragm in the body. Our diaphragm in the ribs, as we inhale, it moves down. The pelvic floor should be moving at the same way that the rib diaphragm is moving. Top of our body and the bottom of our body. These two spots are very much connected. Like we kind of grow from the center of our body outward. And if you think about the soft pink tissues of the tongue and the mouth inside the lips and stuff, it's the same as the soft pink tissue in our genitalia, right? The tongue actually moves down the front panel of the body and connects to our genitalia. And so that connection, learning how to relax this, when this is tight and kind of gripping, that referred tension comes up here. And most people, I do massage work, I'm like, where do you think you hold your tension? Like my shoulders, my neck. And it's usually because we're not able to ground our energy and release that tension, that everything kind of comes up here in the more mobile area and we notice it, right? Mm-hmm. So relaxing this starts to help relax this, right? It opens up the throat chakra, the chest, the heart can relax. We can release that armor because we have the support at the base of our body. So when we're born, as our body starts to develop, typically as babies, we're mouth breathers. We're screaming and laughing, crying. We have this big open tube to take in air, intake valve, right? And it's hard to really regulate air in that way. If you notice, take a breath, place your hands on your chest, take a breath through your nose, and out. Now open your mouth, breathe in through your mouth, take the biggest breath you can. See how much more it went into your chest. the difference between breathing in the nose and then typically when I'm breathing through the mouth, I'm only breathing into this upper chamber. It's not really going anywhere down here. So then we learn nostril breathing, nasal breathing, and you'll hear teachers, yoga teachers tell you to do your belly breathing, right? And that's to help you. We're not actually taking breath into the body. What we're doing is moving the diaphragm down more deeply, kind of suctioning it downward so that we can make more space for the lungs, right? And then we start breathing through the nose, which then we start breathing esophageal breath, which is a smaller regulator, right? So we can pull the breath in better. We can move heat out of the body better. So it's just as we start to mature and we start to use these mechanics of our body. Belly breathing, the problem with belly breathing, it's great if you're having like panic attacks or something, you're stuck in this breath here and you can't, like you don't know how to get breath in. We don't have bones here, so it's easy to kind of protrude that and make space, kind of suck that diaphragm in. The problem with it is that when we move the diaphragm down, it's pushing down into the organs. And so instead of the organs pushing down into the pelvic bowl, giving tone to those muscles, we're displacing it forward when we belly breathe, and we're pushing our organs out forward. So they're not getting compressed, right? And so they can then release and fill up with blood and oxygen, right? And kind of get that workout that they need. And as I'm doing that, as they're going forward, it actually pulls up on my pelvic floor because all of this that's kind of relaxed now has to move up and forward, right? So it's actually, if I'm belly breathing into my belly, it's hard for me to do that because I've practiced so long. We're actually making it harder on our pelvic floor to relax as we inhale, so then we're not getting oxygen, blood flow to our pelvic floor. Things are starting to tighten up. We start losing disconnection, kind of dissociating. In a sexual sense, you can guess how that might function, may cause dysfunction, but just in life in general, if we're creating tension there, then we've got that ping pong thing going on. We're scatterbrained, we can't ground our energy and really be in our body. Instead of breathing in, as I breathe in the belly breath, my belly moves forward, right? Bowls forward. What I want to do, instead of creating this round shape when I breathe, I want to create an hourglass shape so that my waist comes in, my belly actually kind of, Ujjayi breath, where you create that constriction in the back of the throat. It's kind of like that just at the base of the ribs, right? And that may seem counterproductive to, now my ribs can't expand in my lungs, right? But actually when we breathe out and our lungs expand, we're pulling on the diaphragm, so it makes it harder to move down and create a lot of space, right? If we kind of keep that tight here and create that kind of suction, that kind of straw-like sensation to fill up the pelvic bowl and push our organs downward, then our diaphragm is moving downward, right? We're kind of sucking it a little bit farther down, and we're actually getting more expansion through up here, right? Because I've got this here, so I can expand up here through the chest, right? So if I'm expanding down here, I tend to breathe like this, and then my shoulders come up because all my width is right here. So I want to contract that. So instead of looking like belly breath like this, belly forward, exhale back, it's actually going to go in and up as I inhale and exhale, belly spine. In and up, and exhale. And so to practice with the pelvic floor, we're going to use the blanket as a prop. We're going to roll it up. So you have a blanket. Now, typically when I teach class, I teach a lot of private sessions. It's something not everybody wants to do in a public class. I appreciate y'all going along with me. So we're going to roll it up to create, so the pelvic bone, see here, we've got kind of this concave, right? So when we're sitting flat on the ground, our pelvic floor is not resting on the ground, so it's kind of hard to breathe into the floor through our pelvic floor. So we're going to lift, create a roll just to lift the surface of the ground up to our pelvic bowl. So it shouldn't be too thick. You don't want it too compressed to where you can't feel any movement. You don't want it too loose to where when you breathe in, you're not breathing into it. So pelvic floor breathing, a good way to think about it is that we're gonna blow up a balloon between the hip bones. We're gonna let even the anus relax and kind of flare out, almost like you're taking a poop, but not that strong, but just letting it relax. As you exhale, you're gonna lift and gather. Imagine deflating that balloon on the exhales, what we call a Kegel, right? Typically in our world, people are just taught Kegels, just do them. Let's just do them, just do them. Typically we're already tight there, and an overly tight pelvic floor is a dysfunctional pelvic floor because the muscles can't move. They're kind of plastered to the bones, right, and petrified and stiff. So we need to work a little bit more on the expansion and the release, most likely, just to kind of even out the time we've kept it kind of pent up, and what we might call anal retentive. So now we kind of know what it looks like in the body. We're going to get some proprioception and feel where it is in the body. Roll it up, and we're going to sit on it lengthwise like that. Again, if you need to roll it up a little more, that's cool. If you need to unroll it a bit, great. You can do this at home with a hand towel, t-shirt, pair of socks. So, just want to roll, and you can close the eyes and just breathe normally. And just get used to your body and the props beneath it. Notice where the muscles of the body are touching the props. And now we're going to breathe into our pelvic bowl. So, sipping in the breath through the nose, kind of constricting at the lower part of the ribs, the upper belly. And you can think about, when yoga teachers say breathe into the belly, you can kind of turn that into, now when you hear that, instead of pushing the belly forward, think breathe into the deepest part of the belly. So you can think breathing into the lowest part of the belly, just above the pubic bone, and blowing up that part of the belly. So inhale, creating that balloon. If you're not feeling it, push into the roll, then go ahead and get a little bigger. So inhaling, imagine that pelvic bowl spreading out around the rolled up blanket and pushing into it. Can you feel it as it goes down? You may not feel it if it's too tight. It took me like a week to kind of start feeling mine really moving. And it takes about 6 to 9 months to reverse the breath. I'm gonna teach you some stuff to help you get that going. So as we inhale, we spread the pelvic floor, blowing up that balloon between the hip bones. You can imagine the sits bones expanding away from each other. And exhale, lifting, gathering, kind of that elevator sense of moving the organs in and up towards the ribs, belly towards spine. Inhale, release it all down, let that hammock of the pelvic bowl hang. Exhale, lift and gather. You can also think of the pelvic floor as a palm, the palm of the hand. As we inhale, we spread our fingers. Exhale, clench, push all that breath out of the body. So we're using that pump, again, kind of knit the ribs in. We want to push all the breath out. Deplete that pump fully. And inhale, fill it up, lengthen through the belly. So the palm of the hand would spread around this roll. As you exhale, imagine you could create a fist with the fingers of the pelvic floor and grip that rag and lift it up. You won't be able to, but just imagine using those muscles that you would. Inhale and spread the fingers. Exhale, lift. Inhale, lengthen through the belly. And exhale, zip up through the belly like you're putting on a wetsuit. You feel that contraction come from the base of the spine all the way up. And inhale, releasing. And exhale, lift and gather. Inhale, spreading the palm. Exhale, gripping, lifting. So in males, I might say on the inhale, breathe into your balls, right? On the exhale, lift your balls. Imagine you could lift them using those muscles. If I told you to lift them, how would you do that, right? Female, you can think about inhaling, imagining the soft petals of a flower opening. The vulva becomes the flower. Vaginal canal is opening on the inhale. On the exhale, the flower is folding back up for nighttime, just closing its petals softly. Inhaling, unfolding. And exhaling, closing. Again, the balloon's always a good one. And also I want you to think about when you're breathing, not only breathing up and down through the spine and the front of the body, but think about a kite, how it catches wind. It not only has the structure of the vertical, it has that horizontal. So breathing up and down, but also expanding through the collarbone, like the collarbone spreading across the chest. So the chest widens at the top of the body. And exhale, let it relax. I kind of knit my ribs in on the exhale just to kind of push all the breath out, squeeze the body, squeeze the organs. Inhale, let them fill up and flourish, blood, oxygen. Exhale, lift and gather. So you might have trouble kind of feeling the pelvic floor. This is kind of helping a little bit, getting an idea of where it is in the body. It'll take time if it's tight. I remember I went home, I did a pelvic floor training, and I went home and did a self-exam, and my muscle felt like bone. It felt, perfect word for it was petrified, right? Because it was just trauma stored in my muscle, clinging to my bone, but trying to stay in control and not able to move and flow and let me relax and enjoy life, right? So it can take some time to get those muscles to start to relax, kind of chipping away, letting them know it's safe and all that stuff. So we're gonna come up, I'm gonna show you some exercises. So there's a common dynamic posture that I'd like to address, and that's the goddess squat. Typically when I go to a class, they'll have us inhale up and exhale down. And if I'm doing pelvic floor breathing, this kind of goes against trying to expand into my pelvic floor and zip up and create that structure, because I'm working against the resistance of my muscles, and so I'm actually building more tension. And if you already have an overly tightened pelvic floor, resisting against the muscles is going to create more tension, and it's leaving you very vulnerable to injury here, pulling a muscle or straining a muscle in a very sensitive and vulnerable area. So if you're breathing backwards, as in inhaling and lifting up on the pelvic floor, exhaling and releasing the pelvic floor, then it might make sense to inhale up and drop down, drop everything down. But if we're bearing down and dropping down on an exhale as we spread and open up that space, then we're setting ourselves up for incontinence, prolapse, hemorrhoids, and hernias. So this is something we kind of want to avoid. We want to give support, kind of like if I had a hammock down there and it went slack and I spilled out of it. So we don't want our organs falling out of our pelvic floor. So we want to be toning, widening, and integrating the muscle, and exhale, lifting and gathering. If I inhale as I come down, I'm getting space to fill up and flourish. Exhale, lift, gather and compress. Inhale, release, and exhale, lift. And if I'm breathing backwards, then I'm inhaling up, lifting up on the pelvic floor, and exhaling and then dumping down. Not giving any space, just kind of dumping it all out. So we want to have some awareness in our movement when we're creating that vulnerable space. Inhaling, releasing into that base, and exhale, zipping and lifting. If I wanted to work with resistance in the pelvic floor, which I probably wouldn't want to do if it's tight because resistance is going to cause more tension, I would recommend staying in the static squat and practicing here, inhaling into the pelvic floor and exhaling, kind of isolating the movement so I don't have the noise of the orchestration of more layers of dynamic movement. I can focus my attention on the movement of the pelvic floor muscles. So inhaling and opening. You can even hold on to something, a chair or the wall to help balance and give support. As your body strengthens and becomes more intelligent in this awareness of the pelvic floor, then you might be able to add a little bit more resistance. What I would try to be aware of is not resisting against the stretch of the muscle as I'm going down and pulling against that tightening of the pelvic floor as I exhale. If you're just really set on creating the movement for whatever reason, needing to work into this area, I might suggest coming down onto the floor, removing the weight-bearing aspect on the pelvic floor, and taking the legs out of a fixed position, which will decrease the likelihood of injury. You can come onto the floor, and inhale here, exhale. Inhale, expand, exhale, pull in and up. When it comes to the body, we can work with tension and expansion, lengthening and contracting. So using these two to help us sculpt the body and release tension patterns. Just becoming aware of how we're using it.
Are we exacerbating tension, or are we counteracting it? So this is what we need to think about in the yoga of our yoga.
So we're going to come up, I'm going to show you some exercises that you can implement into your routine to help you kind of reverse that breath, reverse that belly breathing. The key is we want the diaphragm of the ribs to move in the same direction as the diaphragm of the pelvic floor. So as I inhale, my diaphragm moves down, my pelvic floor moves down. As I exhale, everything lifts up and pushes the breath out of my body. So I'm going to stand up with me. I'm going to show you a common exercise that we do in yoga, goddess squat, right? Grab the legs wide, the toes are diagonal here. A lot of times in yoga class, we'll inhale up and exhale down, right? Inhale up and exhale down. But actually, we want to start thinking about what pattern of breath is supporting my pelvic floor movement in this exercise, right? So I want my pelvic bowl to expand on the inhale. So as my legs are opening, hey, there's my pelvic floor expanding. I might as well breathe into that and help and use that expansion. You can use your arms, inhale and fill up. And then exhale, start to lift and gather from the base, zipping up through the spine, creating that A-frame structure is actually giving the body, more alignment here, right? So inhale and let it all drop down, and inhale, relax, spread that pelvic bowl, lengthen through the belly. Exhale, zip it up like a wetsuit up the body. And I like using my hands with it just to get everything moving in the same way, so my brain doesn't have to think too hard what's going on. Exhale. Inhale, moving down and out. Exhale, lift, gather, and coming to center. I also do ballet, and when we do pliés, which are really important for jumps, right? And when we plie, and a lot of teachers don't know about the breath either, but the idea is to inhale, fill up with breath, and then like a rocket, use my breath and my propulsion to shoot me off the floor, rather than trying to suck myself up into the air, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's just kind of, the physics makes sense, right? Inhale, using that force to help lift us, right? So it's going to take time to kind of change in the body, and then there's layers to it. You're going to notice, now I got to go through all my yoga practices, now I got to go through how I move at work, all this stuff. Just retraining the body. This is a part of reparenting ourselves. We come into maturity, and it's just stages of our development. When we are younger and we come into this world, we're small and soft and all love, and everybody sees us as smiling and happy to see us. And our first understanding of texture or contrast in the world is trauma, something negative. And we're like, ooh, then we start to do that, and we start over time creating that armor. And that's actually a part of our natural development, because it's like the caterpillar creating that cocoon for all its soft insides to remain safe, while it's creating those safe boundaries outside. And so when we come into adulthood, we mature, then we can take control of our lives. We're no longer dependent on someone to do it for us. We can make our own choices and create those safe spaces in our lives so we can let that armor down, right? So this is part of our development. You weren't behind. It's not like, oh, if I'd only known this before. This is just when you learn it, right? So go easy on yourself and how long it may take to start feeling that. You may feel it and then lose it. You know how yoga is. We yoga until we get to the center of it, right? So we can inhale and kind of do that. So this is a great one to do before an exercise, when you wake up, before you go to sleep, just kind of reset the body. I would notice that when I go to the grocery store, those were the times that I would be like, oh, let me practice my pelvic floor breathing. When I'm waiting in line, I've got nothing to do. I'm like, no, let me do my pelvic floor breathing. And I was like, oh no, what's it supposed to feel like? I have no, I was trying to breathe and just stand there and figure it out with my head, which is, our processor. It's not really the most intelligent part of us, right? Especially when our body's trained for something else. So I went back to thinking about a goddess squat, and rather than, doing this in the grocery line, it's just the idea of bend my knees. As I go down, I inhale, right? As I come up, I exhale. So it's just kind of that, nobody's gonna notice that or think you're doing something, weird, or call you out for it. So it's dropping my knees, bending, open, exhale, zip up, right? Inhale, open, relax, exhale, zip up, create structure, right? So that's just kind of an easy way to remember and help our body practice when we can't always do it, get on a yoga mat. So let's come to the floor. I'm going to show you a couple more. So we're going to look at the pelvic floor breathing. I'm going to teach you some stuff about creating sound through the body, and then we're going to do a long sound bath. or you'll have a chance to incorporate releasing with sound, using the pelvic bowl to move that sound out, and just the difference that might make to help you connect to this. We're gonna work with some sound too with the bowls. So on this one, just watch me for a moment. I'm gonna come down on the back, knees bent. So as I inhale, lengthen through the body. It's like I'm gonna do a cat-cow, but on my back, right? So as I inhale, I'm pushing my tailbone back into the floor. My back's arching up. I'm breathing in and all the way down to my pelvic bowl, letting it open and spread, even like tipping my tailbone back and letting my base spread. And then exhale, I'm gonna start to lift that tailbone and start to zip up through the body. I'm not gonna push in. I don't wanna go up into bridge just yet. I just wanna practice moving that pelvis and letting it rock. So the benefit of doing it on the floor like this is if we do have a lot of tension down here, we get the added benefit of massaging the sacrum with the weight of our body. So as we inhale, the breath comes down and our hips kind of roll forward. As you exhale, tailbone tucks and curls. Breath moves out. Inhale and exhale, like rolling up a tube of toothpaste. So come on down.
Here are a few exercises to help you feel into the pelvic floor. We'll start with some pelvic tilts. Just basically just cat-cow on the back. This is helpful because we're just getting rid of using the musculature of the arms and legs, and we can really focus on the pelvic floor. And also if we're tight in this lower back sacrum area because of a tight pelvic floor, these pelvic tilts are gonna help use our body weight to massage that area. So as I inhale, fill up through the chest, suction down through the belly, fill up the hips. Hips kind of roll forward as my back arches into my cow pose. And then exhale, start to tilt the tailbone. And it kind of rolls up, my back laminates into the floor. Inhale, hips roll forward, back peels off the floor. Exhale, let the tailbone curl. So this is working on the tail of the spine, the end of the spine. And we can eventually, as we work into this, you can do this more exaggerated or more soft and subtle to feel those muscles move back and forth, kind of pulse the breath. Inhale and release, exhale, pumping up. Inhale, open, exhale, close. Become softer movements. Another thing to think about is the air is always pushing down on us. To take an inhale, we're not sucking the breath into our body, we're actually relaxing our muscles to allow the breath to move into the body. So you can actually initiate your breath with the pelvic bowl. So when you want to inhale, just lengthen and expand the pelvic bowl, create that space for the air to move in. Exhale, lift, and initiate that closing up the spine. Inhale, lengthen, allow the breath in. And exhale, usher the breath out, the tension of the muscles. So this is just using the bottom of the spine if we want to move into integrating the top of the spine. We can move into crunches here, so I place the hands behind the head or the ears. Inhale in your cow pose, exhale, tilt the tailbone, curl up. What one of my students calls a doodle bug. Inhale, open, and exhale. And just feeling the pelvic floor zipping up through the front of the body to create that C, to make the two ends meet, to connect the reef. And exhale.
So you can continue with that, or you can move it into kind of going into a bridge pose. So we inhale, the hips roll forward, breath moves down the body. So we exhale, start to lift that tailbone off the floor and just peel the floor, peel the back off of the floor, zipping up through the front of the body. You can feel that structure in the belly a little bit better here. Inhale, I start to sequentially laminate the spine down on the floor. Tailbone's the last thing to roll out as you go into that cat pose, a cow pose, back arches. Exhale, tailbone lifts, push into the feet. And zip all the way up into a bridge pose. Just noticing too, maybe in a class, how are they having me breathe as I lift into bridge pose? And what would be better for my body at this time to work on my pelvic floor breathing and give some relaxation to my pelvic floor as I'm moving. And sometimes backward breathing can be beneficial. It just depends, and our body's going to respond and stay in the state that we practice the most.
mindful of that. If you want more of a challenge, you lift the legs in the air. Inhale, blow up that balloon in the hips. Exhale, reach up to the feet. Inhale, release, and exhale. From here we can do this backwards. We can inhale, reversing the breath and blowing the bubble down into the floor. And exhale. Use that structure of the body to maintain the plane. Inhale. And exhale. There's so many ways we can kind of feel into the pelvic floor. One I like to do is from tabletop. We'll come onto hands and knees. Put the knees under the hips and the hands under the shoulders. And on this one, I imagine blowing up that balloon, and I'm gonna let my leg muscles relax. I'm not gonna use my leg muscles and my glutes so much to raise my leg. My leg just lifts on that balloon of breath from the pelvic floor. Then I'm gonna go out too far, and then exhale. I kind of grab that garage door down with the palm of my pelvic floor. Inhale, release. Floats up, exhale. Use that pelvic floor to pull the leg back in. Just feeling that connection between the thighs and the pelvic floor, the glutes, the pelvic floor. We'll do that a couple of times. Switch sides. Inhaling, open. Exhaling, let the leg fall as that balloon deflates. Inhale, lengthen through the belly. Breathe all the way down towards the toes. Exhale, lift and gather up towards the ribs. Inhale, release. Exhale, lift and gather. Wiggle the tail. Another one is just a simple forward fold, not even a full forward fold, just inhaling, filling up the body, exhaling, depleting the body, making that space for the body to fold forward. So you can kind of think about those party favors where they're all rolled up and you blow into them and they straighten out. Blowing up and exhaling, curling back in. Inhale, blowing it up, exhale. Inflating up, deflating down. Or those windsock men that dance. Just feeling into the pelvic floor as you breathe. Inhale, using the pelvic floor to inflate and lift the body. And exhale, deflating the pelvic floor. Let the body just fall into gravity forward. Inhale. The breath, initiate the movement. Exhale. Just slowing and softening this movement so that we can feel into the pelvic floor as we move. As we exhale and compress the organs, we make space for the fold. Inhaling up. Inhaling, strengthening and lengthening through the belly. Exhale, relax and fold. I also like doing this one side to side, inhaling up. Exhaling one side into the other. Give a nice stretch in the back. You also get to work on your pelvic floor connection. Relaxing the toes and the feet. Kind of feeling I'm slowly juggling myself side to side. Some great stretches for the pelvic floor. Happy baby. Holding the outside edges and kicking the feet, softening the toes, just making circles, breathing into the open space as it relaxes. And also do sort of happy baby against the wall. Bring your bum to the wall. Relax here. Breathing into the pelvic floor. Don't worry too much about contracting the pelvic floor because we've probably done too much of that in our life. We're really feeling into opening, expanding, creating sensation, opening those nerve passageways, oxygenating those cells. It takes the weight off of the pelvic floor, right? And then there's our half frog.
We'll bring one leg out to the side if you have a blanket. It's nice. Or you can just do it sideways on your mat. We're gonna come to a half frog pose. You can have your upper body up in Sphinx, so you can lay down if you like. I like having the Sphinx pose because it gives a little more tension to where when I breathe in, I can feel that connection to the pelvic floor. Just breathing and letting it expand. As you exhale, lift and gather, just noticing how the muscles are moving together. You might even feel areas of discomfort, or it might bring up uncomfortable, irritable feelings, all that tension being released and moved through the body. And you can also go to like a pelvic floor therapist and get a pelvic floor massage. Well, this is something you can also do yourself. There are pelvic floor wands that can be used by male or female. I think those are really helpful. It's not a sexual practice, it's more therapeutic, physical therapy type thing. I use a pelvic floor wand, and when I use it, I feel like when my chest starts to relax, I'm like, wow, how does that happen? My eyes will just start, emotions just start pouring, and I'm not like sad or like stuck in them, but they were stuck in me and they're just pouring out, right? This is cleansing, it's really nice. Came to my mind was just how much connection I was missing from holding all of this tension. We accumulate tension a lot from our belief system and this subconscious holding pattern we create. This holding pattern creates this tension pattern, which can create a chronic tension. Chronic tension will cause a decrease in the energetic flow and the tightness in the muscles, build up in the muscle fiber, and this can cause pain, discomfort, fibroids, menstrual issues, a lot of problems within the pelvic area from tension within the muscles and the fascia. To warm up, we can switch sides. It's going to be a very subtle feeling at first when it starts to open up, which is really sweet. It's starting to form that relationship and getting to know each other again. Inhaling, blowing up that balloon between the hips, letting it spread as the belly lengthens. Creates that suction from the chest to the hips. Exhale, lift and gather, pressing the breath in and up through the center of the body, out of the chest. Inhale, lengthen, expand through the buttocks, pelvic bowl. Exhale, lift and gather, ushering the breath in and up through the body. And straighten out both legs, maybe bend the knees, windshield wiper the feet. When it comes to massaging the pelvic floor, we can approach it internally and externally. I'll show you some ways we can massage from the exterior. We'll start by relaxing the larger muscles that are connected to the pelvic floor. So kind of getting into the belly of the glutes. We can bend the knees and kind of lean onto and lean onto your side. You can stack your legs if you'd like. Kind of like my ankles crossed. Just kind of making circles, letting the weight of the body massage around that hip joint and then to the glute. Just going a few circles in one direction and then circling into the other direction. And then we'll switch sides. Now we can use a foam roller to massage into the glutes to get ready for the pelvic floor massage. We want the larger muscles a bit softer so that we have less chance of pinching and pulling on the more delicate tissues. Let's massage the sit bones a little bit. We're gonna come and just opening the legs. They don't have to be very far. So we're just gonna let the heels be heavy. Let the sits bones be heavy on the floor, and it's kind of rocking the body back and forth by moving the toes. And you'll feel the muscles kind of maybe grinding over the bone. So let yourself relax. Notice if you're holding tension in your jaw, your shoulders, tension's being released. It might get trapped in other parts of the body, wiggling fingers and toes. So instead of the foam roller,
we'll use a towel or a blanket. As we're rolling it, depending on the tightness, we can really control how dense the roll it will be. If we need something softer and more forgiving, it can be a little bit looser. If you want a little bit more sensation and compression, make it a little bit tighter. And play around with the size, what feels comfortable. I kind of like mine at an angle beginning so I can get into this attachment in the inner thigh and the pelvic bowl opening. And just letting the body relax there. I'm doing the pelvic floor breathing here. So breathing down the length of the spine, all the way into the roll, spreading the palm of the pelvic floor. And exhale, so let it softly lift. Don't need to pull up, just trying to expand and stretch into this. And inhaling all the way down to the tailbone, maybe even blowing a bubble into the floor. And exhale, let your body spread into the roll. Relax the toes, shoulders, and jaw. You maybe play with that wiggling of the toes again. Maybe slowing it down. Noticing maybe where you're holding tension, where you might be triggered to react and grip and brace. And when you're ready, massage on the other side. Bring that compression to the area. So allow the muscles to relax on the release. Taking long, deep breaths down the belly, into the hips, blowing up that balloon of the pelvic bowl. Exhale, surrendering into the weight of the body. Maybe wiggling the toes. And I also like to place it along the sits bones. Kind of roll back and forth, getting a little extra massage in the sits bones, letting the legs be heavy. Maybe finding a place of tension, so allowing the body to sit heavy there. Breathe in instead of bracing into the sensation, spreading into sensation. Exhale, relaxing. Doing this as long as feels necessary or comfortable. Just kind of playing with different areas. You could also use tools like massage balls. These are tune-up balls, and you buy them, they come in this little pack. You could get tennis balls and tie them into a sock. This one's called the Worm, and it has a nice length to it. But what I would recommend if you're using a ball, some people like lacrosse balls for pressure point massage. I find that these are a bit too dense and intense for the delicate area of the pelvic floor. So you could use a ball like this, but just add some cushioning with the blanket or the towel as much as might be needed to feel comfortable. And then maybe using something like that to get a little bit deeper into the bowl lining. And just exploring different areas. Making sure we're addressing both sides. You can think about the pelvic floor opening like a clock. At 12 o'clock, we're here at the tip of the pubic bone. We may want to stay away from between like 11 and 1, where the urethra exits the body's a little bit a more sensitive area as well. We can begin to become a little bit more intimate with our pelvic floor and understanding where we might hold tightness. And again, while doing this massage, breathing down the length of the spine. Noticing if we're holding tension as it moves out of the pelvic floor, if it's getting trapped anywhere else. We want to inhale and create that space so the tension can move out. And exhale, just ushering out, lightly lifting up on the pelvic floor, wiggling through the body, making sure that charge is able to escape. I do recommend looking into these tune-up balls. They have a nice give and they come in many different sizes. Something else that's nice for the glutes, I found these PetSmart dog toys, extra large tennis balls that I just put in a little sack to use for my lower back. That's also really good. Getting into the glutes. For information on internal pelvic floor massage, I'll show a clip from one of my bed linens videos. You can go to a specialized doctor or a professional therapist to get an evaluation or a therapeutic pelvic massage to release the tension, or you can try taking it into your own hands. Either way, I suggest you at least investigate the area and see what you're feeling. How is your body feeling? How are these areas feeling? What is their emotional state? If you'd like to investigate these muscles of the pelvic bowl, you can lie on your side and use your thumb entering from behind the legs and just make your way through and feel along the bone lining of the pelvic bowl. You can give yourself a massage there. I find it a little bit difficult, and I got a pelvic wand. It's a therapeutic wand to massage the inner pelvic lining. It's like therapy for me. It's not a sexual activity for me, but you can use different ends. This one's more tapered like a finger. It's got kind of the edge so that you can get deeper into the pelvic bowl and release tension from these areas. And it really relieves a lot of tension in my lower back and even lifts up my chest, lets my shoulders relax. So it's amazing how much tension we hold in the sacral area, and that's right around that sacrum, that powerhouse of nerves coming from our spine and gathering at our sacral area. So this type of non-sexual therapeutic massage is great to increase the energetics in the body, the flow of sensation throughout the entire system. Just gives overall stronger integration to help balance the body. So if you're interested in this as a pelvic wand or therapeutic wand, there are plenty of videos on YouTube to help you learn how to use it. I think that our breath is also important, learning how to breathe into our pelvic bowl. I think a lot of us are taught to breathe backwards, so breathing into our pelvic bowl helps to relax the area and work through the tension in those muscles. If we're not breathing correctly, we may be storing more tension. So you can go check out my video on the pelvic floor. It talks about pelvic floor breathing and how to relax more in that area. Sensual and sexual exploration is about finding what is pleasurable to us, maybe establishing our boundaries, exploring and discovering new things we didn't know, and putting away the myths of things that we were told and don't fit for us. I think it's important to approach all of this with a realistic mindset, because a lot of fantasy doesn't play out the same in reality. It's important to have a sense of humor and openness about things, not take it too seriously. So have a little bit of sense of humor with yourself. Hope you found this video helpful. Feel free to leave a comment, send me a message. Thanks for watching.
One thing that I talk about in my tantric sex education is when we go through puberty in our youth, starting to learn to feel pleasure in our body. Our kundalini energy is activated, that masculine feminine starts to move together. We interpret it as sexual because that's what we're told, but it's beyond that. We start to feel that happening. We don't live at home alone, hopefully, when we're going through puberty, like 11 or 12. Hopefully we have a house, a family with us. And so when we start to explore our bodies, what I've gathered is that people tend to not want to be noticed, so they'll hold their breath, right? When you're starting to explore pleasure in your body, like, I don't want anybody to know what's going on. I'm going to hold my breath, be very quiet, so nobody knows what I'm doing, right? And so that kind of continues on into life, where we are not only in our sexual situations, but any moment of like pleasure or like joy or like excitement or like trigger, you know, like makes us kind of brace, right? And then we can't expand into that feeling of excitement. We get nervous and anxious, and we don't know how to hold it in our body because we're not used to breathing through it. We're used to, in those more like pleasurable situations, kind of trying to grab onto them and hold onto them and make, you know, don't leave me. And when we do that, we're actually cutting them off. We're becoming that dense energy where we can't conduct the energy. The vibration can't move through us, and we can't live in that state. If they're contracted, you know, it's kind of on guard, then vibration's not going to move easily through very dense muscle, right? It gets muted, so we want things to be soft and flow and let that energy be more conductive through our body. When those can expand and relax, then the nerves in those tissues can start to activate and connect to the other nerves in the body. So we get into our super senses, our subtle senses. And so when we can open up those channels, those pathways, we can move more sensation fully through the body and not just down here, right? And kind of exhausting that and wearing it out. And I was like, you know, depending all on that, there's pleasure to be had, right? And it's not all sexual, but it's just as enjoyable, right? And we learn to live in that orgasmic state. It's kind of what sound baths are about, practicing living in that orgasmic state, so we can, that becomes our baseline rather than I'm so stressed I need to get there. I'm already there, and then I can fly from that, right? A little tip for the guys. When we're creating guttural sounds from our body, the masculine, we're the dominant, we're the leader, we're setting the tone of how things should be, right? And so when we can learn to relax into our body, then we can guide our partner and invite them to do the same. They feel that safe space is facilitated. This guy knows what he's doing, I can relax into it too, right? And we're creating those guttural sounds that something in our body, it's like a little primal thing, and we're like, Arr! You know, our little animal ear, like, whoop, whoop. What is that? You know, we're moving through the body instead of, you know, moving through our chest and our head sound, but moving that, that strength. You know, our roots are just coming up, and we are showing that strength. That's something we can, when we have that support, we can soften and surrender and open into, right? So, just a little tip for the guys. Lead the way. So this practice I created, it's like Ujjayi breath, where we're going to turn the dial up on it. It's going to be exaggerated Ujjayi breath. So Ujjayi breath is that ocean breath, that Darth Vader breath. Sounds like constricting the back of my throat to create a smaller valve to regulate the energy even more, right? So I'm just going to kind of turn it up. I want to create some texture and gravel in my sound. To help move that energy up. And as I do it, I'm going to blow up that balloon and use that power of my pelvic floor to push it through my body. You hear all that kind of gritty, weird sound and stuff that's going on in my body. What that's doing is massaging the soft tissues of my insides. Our esophageal folds actually look like labia. Like, these things are all so connected, right? We think everything's so disconnected. But it's all just part of our body. This is our biology and how it functions. We've just been perverted into thinking this other story and this compartmentalization, that we don't know how to function as a whole. It's gonna be like that. We're gonna inhale, fill up that balloon. Imagine, you know, when you squeeze a balloon, it goes. So we're gonna fill up that balloon. Just kind of create that constriction a little bit in the back of the throat. And it may start small, it may start quiet and soft. Your body and your nervous system may not be comfortable with releasing and expressing, because when we're used to being tight and in control, thinking we're in control, and we start to soften, that feels destabilizing. All right, our nervous system's like, whoa, 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 I don't know what's going on here. Where, you know, I need to check all the corners and underneath the curtains, you know, what's happening in this state. So it may take little bits at a time. You may not feel comfortable making sound yet, and that's totally fine. It may sound weird, and that's fine too. As things starts to move out that congestion, it's gonna work it out. So there's gonna be a little, you know what I'm saying? So things become smooth again. We've got all those kind of tangles in our nervous, in our tension pattern. So that's what we're gonna play with. And another benefit to sexually creating this stuff is because the tongue and the genitals are connected. When we're opening that pathway, that soft palate that the tongue moves down, creates the genitals, we get the vibration, the ripples, and it connects all this front panel of the body, which stimulates the spine also. So the whole body comes alive, right? And then as we start to smooth out the sound, what it's going to start to come into is this, what I call a panther breath. Sounds like a purring. It's like because I feel all the way connected through my body. When I'm in the sexual energy, the more heated energy, or like, during a intense vinyasa class, then I can also do it on the inhale. I can't I can do it on cold, right, on the inhale, but it'll start to and your body just purrs, right? And that's so healing, right? It starts to just shake out all that stuff that we've got stuck in there, right? Like we do in Jess's class, we're moving it so that inside body is soft enough to like let it all go, right? So we're gonna use some sound in the background just so we feel a little more comfortable expressing and have something to sing or create sound into. Just focus on that pelvic floor breathing, creating that pump and visualizing that, pushing the air out. Remove any stories of judgment of what it sounds like or what people think. Just think as your body, you're moving air through these pockets and crevices in your body. It's gonna sound different. And what does that sound like? Be curious. What does it sound like in my body? What is the environment in there? Can I kind of read it from the sonic message I'm getting through my sound, right? Like a sonogram. Can that create the visuals of what that might look like? Go ahead and taste. Maybe deep breath or shallow, maybe playing and pulsing with the pelvic floor. You want to release through the mouth in there. Feel the bowls in the body. By creating sound, we're kind of opening that pathway, that channel of sound and vibration. We're not only moving sound out, but sound can move as that's open. It can come in and play with our what we're sending out, right? I'll show you what that feels like. And we're going to tune into the sound of this bowl. Just try to create that note. Color, sound, smell, taste, right? These frequencies. Like the root chakra is red, shows visually that frequency displays as the color red. Audibly it displays as the note C, the tone C, and it goes up the scales, which is cool with the chakras. We start at the C note at the base of the body and go up. And it's kind of the same if you learn piano. We start with C's, like our major chord. That's the root chakra in the body. As these sounds, C, D, F, G, in between the base chakra, the main chakras are the sharps and the flats in musical tone. And those are actually in between our chakras. It would be like where green and blue make teal, right? Or red and pink make magenta, there's another color set. And that's actually where our endocrine system, all of our glands, our thymus gland, pituitary, they're in between. So the sharps and the flats kind of stimulate those, right? Now, where on the scale, when the notes are close together, or the same note, right? If I play two, if I play two of the same note, it's a little bit of a slower purr, but I get that kind of dissonance. It's kind of banging, they're kind of fighting for space. So it creates that kind of purr, that kind of thing we're trying to do in our body. And we can do it with our voice. If I do one like next to that note, our sound to the sounds outside of us, right? Letting those merge and create a whole new field. So we're gonna get ready for a sound bath. I invite you during sound bath to release with sound, maybe practice using that pelvic floor breathing to create that sound. It can be a little bit softer, or allowing, these sounds to pull sound out of you very softly. Let yourself connect with that and let this vibration through that open channel help flush that through for you.
Alrighty, we'll rub the palms of the hands together, create some friction in the hands. Remain lying down if you want to meet me in a seat. And then placing the palms over the heart for an Anjali Mudra, palms together in front of the heart. In our class with an Om. You can sing along or just listen. If you sing along, I invite you to feel the vibrations beneath your hands in the chest. Any sound, tone, volume. Take a deep inhale and exhale together, and we'll inhale to Om. Inhale. Exhale fully. Inhale to Om. Thank you for taking the time to release tension from your body. Every time we release tension from our bodies, we're releasing a measure of tension from the entire world, making it a lighter and brighter space. Thank you for your practice.